Hello learners and welcome to Constant Learners. In this video, we are discussing the concept of machine learning. Machine learning is the field of study that gives computers the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. Without being explicitly programmed means what? The computers are not instructed or they are not spoon-fed, okay? That means they're given a chance to learn the concepts without being actually programmed. That is, without any human assistance. So rather than feeding all the data into the computer is taught to learn, or the computer is trained to learn or identify the concepts to generate the proper output. First, the data scientists, machine learners, and researchers feed the computer with large amount of good quality data. And this data has to be both input and output data. Then they use this data along with some algorithms to generate the models. Okay, and they train the computer to use this model to create its own logic. Okay, and then this logic will be useful for the computer to create the outputs in the future. Okay, for example, initially 2 plus 3 is equal to 7 is given as an input to the computer, and the data scientists use this data along with some algorithms to generate some models. Okay, and thus this model is used by the computer to generate its own logic. Now, what happens in the future when an unknown or new data is given as an input to the computer? The computer uses that logic that it has created with the help of data models to generate the output. Okay, so here in this slide, first we are feeding it with the input and output data. Then this data and some algorithm is used to generate the models, and the computer uses this model to create its own logic. So once the logic has been created, what happens? The computer, when is fed with unknown data, it uses this logic to generate the required output. So now the computer will know what operation has to be performed and what output has to be generated. Okay. We all must have used Netflix and Amazon Prime, right? What happens? We get movie recommendations on these platforms. But how do we get recommended by these movies? See, most of the movies that we get recommended with are similar to the movies that we have already watched in the past on these platforms. Nobody is sitting on the other end constantly monitoring our choices or feeding us with the recommendations. No person is that free. But all of this is done by machine learning. The machine is trained to take input data in the form of our searches or the movies that we have watched in the past or the actors that we prefer to watch. So they use that input data, use its own logic, and recommend us with the new movies. So the machine is trained to take the input data, to use the logic and the algorithms and understand our choices to recommend the movies in the future. Similarly, when we search for a product on an e-commerce site like Amazon or Nykaa, we feed it with our choices in size, brand, color, etc. So we go to their sites or the apps and we input our data, our preferences, our choices, what color we want, what brand we want, what size we want. And the machine uses this information. And every time we use the search engine or we refer some web pages or we use Facebook, we get recommendations on that particular product. How? The machine uses the logic along with the input data that we have input into the apps or on the website and thus recommend us products in the form of advertisements. Also, in case of medicine and healthcare, what happens? In case of medicine, suppose when we get an X-ray or an MRI done, the machine identifies the differences in cell or bone structure. See, the researchers and scientists have already trained the machines with a lot of input and output images to identify what the basic cell structure or the bone structure or a normal cell structure or bone structure is. So every time we get an MRI or an X-ray done, what happens is the machine understands the abnormality in the images and identifies the diseases that a person might be having. Okay. Also, when we use Google Lens to recognize an image, it also uses the concept of machine learning. So from all of these examples, we can conclude that machine learners and scientists are working hard so that computers can analyze the data in the past to generate the outputs for the future. So we can say that machine learning can be used for data analysis as well. We've been discussing data analysis for a long time now. So machines are learning by the experiences. They study the past to predict the future. Okay, like for example, when a pregnant woman looks for any information related to pregnancy, she will be recommended with the baby products. That happens with the help of machine learning. So our choices, our searches are constantly being monitored, and this information is used by machine learning to identify our preferences and recommend us products that we might need for the present or future. That was machine learning. The next video is going to be about classification of machine learning. See you in the next video. Stay tuned, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.